from just shy of 11 million to about 6.5 million. You drop your fund balance from 12%, which is already below what your recommended level is, to about 7%. So if you wanted to take the easiest of all possible ways out, you could balance your budget for next year by taking out a fund equity. However, the year after that, you couldn't do it because you'd be in the hole $7,700 or $7,700,000. So for 1 year, if you wanted to balance your budgets using fund equity, using some of your surplus funds, that is a 1-year solution, but only 1 year. What we're taking a look at, I want to see, thank you. The levy. People are always concerned, especially after this last year when it was a 500% increase. What are things going to do to our taxes? If we balance our budget this year, our taxes rate is going to go down by about 25 cents, all right? So it's going to go down. So if your house value stayed about the same, your property taxes for the school district will go down slightly. This year is at $530. Next year it'll be at $504. What does that mean? About $25 per $100,000 of property value. So if your house is worth $200,000, the school property portion should go down about $50 from what it was last year. Pretty constant, not a big change, but it's not going up. If you follow the line across, if the district does not go to referendum and does not pass a referendum, you would find that in 27-28, you would drop to 463. So you're going to drop another 40 cents or $40 per 100,000. And then it goes down. So, in fact, in 28-29, you would go back, it would go down to 257. Now you've dropped almost $2. So if you do not pass a referendum, your taxes are going to go down. But what it also means is you're not going to have the money to run your district. Or at least you will not have the money to run your district in the way that it's being run now. I mean, we're not going to have as many offerings. We're going to have less kids, but we are not going to have as many offerings to benefit our kids because you will not have the finances to do that. All right, you can go to the next slide.
I just want to step in here and just make a comment that these numbers are very preliminary, and we got to remember that these are not our October numbers, and they're not the numbers that we would have in October when all of the districts across the state have their numbers ready, or their numbers finalized for the year. So the tax levy may adjust up and down a slight amount.
Mrs. Levy?
Thank you so much. Very briefly, one, thank you for your candor. Much appreciated. You referenced if we don't pass a referendum, we will operate our district kind of like in a new normal. At some point in this presentation, will you begin to sketch out what that new normal could look like?
I'm going to end up telling you things that you probably will have to do without if you don't have a referendum, or things you could add to a referendum in the future. So yes, we are going to go over areas that you're going to have to consider.
Thank you so much.
All right, how are you going to come up with $4.5 million? That's really the question at hand. When we were looking at this, our primary goal was to stay as far away from the teacher in the classroom as possible. In other words, what are all the areas we could look at before we actually went to the teacher in front of the students? So one, and these are what I call I'll call them the easy cuts. One is we have vacant land. Now, I didn't realize that we owned property, but I guess that we bought property as a school district when we thought the district was expanding, so we bought certain pieces of property. Obviously, we're not expanding, so the excess property that we have, we can probably sell. Now, that's a one-time revenue, but it's still revenue that we can add. And if you add revenue, it means that can offset some expenditures. So I actually asked Mike Marquette if he could explain a little bit about some of the land that we own and potentially, how saleable are they? So whether or not this is even an option you can consider. Because right now, the way that it looks, we have 8 small lots. The average values would be about a little over $13,000 per lot. We do have one larger lot that could be worth more money depending on the interested buyer. So I'm going to let Mike just give you a little bit more info on, is it worth looking at? Are these lots saleable? Are they saleable at these costs? What would that portion look like?
Thank you all again. Mike Markowitz, Century 21. Wayne just asked me to give a general idea of what's going on in the city of Beloit when it comes to vacant lots. You guys actually own quite a few that were accumulated over several, probably decades, I guess. Most of it is on that 6th Street corridor where you can look at the high school, see some of the practice facilities. Those lots, they're called kind of infield lots in the inner city part of Beloit. On average, they're about 13, 14,000, sometimes 15,000 in the city of Beloit for a lot of that nature. The saleability is, last year, 13 lots total sold that were in that size. They're smaller lots. Usually, if you want to get a larger square footage, something over 1,200, you're looking at a 2-story. So they're not as desirable as some of the lots you'll find in a subdivision or maybe a little bit further out of town or a little bit larger. Out of the 13 that sold, the average days on market was roughly over 2 years, though. So very few of them do sell. They will sell eventually, but only a few a year get picked up and picked off. There is a larger lot, which is right by where the CVS, by the river, where that just closed. That's a more desirable lot because that probably could be zoned some sort of commercial. It's about 6 acres, I believe. There are some tennis courts currently on there right now. Those lots, if you had a CVS, for example, but they just went out of town, they'll pay $120,000 to sometimes $130,000 an acre. Quick Trip will pay $250,000 if you could put a gas station down there, which probably would not take place. So I kind of put it at a value of $300,000 up to whatever large big box store wanted to go in there if they were to sell that. Those again they can be on the market for several years as well. I did take the comp of right up the road on 6th Street where there's going to be a workhouse type development for housing. That one was listed, that was 5 acres and roughly about, I think, $289,000 is what that was listed for and did go under contract. So I kind of made that the floor of what that lot over there could be. The ceiling could, again, be depending on if it's a big major chain from outside the area or national chain coming in, want to be on that corner down there. It's kind of everything in a nutshell. I mean, it's very simple. The lots within the city of Beloit really haven't increased in value very often. Most of the times, the lots that do sell are the neighboring property wants to add on to their lot. Where here, these are empty lots without neighbors. So that is kind of out the window. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Brett.
Yes, Mike. So you mentioned CVS, and I didn't even know it was closed till about last week, but I drove by and it's not there. But, so, is that lot for sale where CVS is? Do you know?
I don't know if it is or not. I haven't seen a sign there. These type of lots, I mean, there is a development that's in place potentially from Portland Avenue Bridge all the way up to budding up to that lot. So there is a potential people within the community that you could may be interested in that lot. I would suspect with CVS not being open that will eventually come for sale as well.
Okay, be patient with me. Here's where I'm going. So there's a street between that lot and the lot that the large lot on 4th Street. So I'm sure that would take a zoning issue to change that, but if you could sell them both, that would make a bigger property for somebody to purchase, which may be more lucrative or more marketable if you could do that.
Potentially correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Carol? Oh, I'm sorry. Tom?
Thanks, Mike. There's a lot of moving parts, as you know, my conversations with Dr. Anderson and Dr. Gratz, or Mr. Gratz, and potential uses in the future on the west end of the parking lot on 6th Street. So, everything's got to work together. It's got to be fluid. We just can't sell them and then try to rebuy 'em. rebuy them. We do know this. And in conversating with Dr. Anderson, you know, and he's put this out about the idea of selling Colac. Moving Colac into the Ops Center, I mean, we have a very, I don't know what capacity we're at, I would say somewhere 20-25%, I don't know for sure. And putting this building up for sale, you know, to me makes perfect sense. This is a very, you know, the market will tell us what this corner lot is worth and what this building is worth. That's an appreciable asset. When we do end up selling this, we'll be underwater because we owe way more than what's valued at. But having said that, it's sometimes okay to get out of the debt that you owe on that because there's incurring expenses daily. And if we get out of that, much like we did with McNeil, those daily expenses of having that property, it's better than paying on the debt year after year after year and month after month after month. I guess it's not a question, but Dr. Anderson actually put this out, and I've heard him say it, you know, about doing that and moving that into Colac in the Ops Center, and then whatever doesn't fit there into other buildings. Do you have any idea what this corner, I know the market will tell you, but what would, you know, we know Regal just resold for X amount per square foot. Do you have any idea what you would put this value at this building?
So there's several comps that are higher end properties like this, single users. I'm personally purchasing one myself in Janesville. Roughly $90 to $150, $115 a square foot. So a building like this would bring you 1.1 to 1.3. I would test the high water mark. It is a very nice, beautiful corner looking at the river, where the other comps I had were not. So this would definitely, you know, there is no income flow for this. This isn't an investment property. This would be somebody that needs 11,000, almost 12,000 square feet. And that potential buyer, there's not as many out there, but they're also this building, as you're well aware, how much it would cost to build one of these. You would have people entertaining this property in this corner with its views and what's going on, close proximity to the downtown as well. So this would be an attractive property, but if you're looking at just general price per square foot, which that's how I usually base value as well as appraisers do, they're going to be looking between 90 to 115 a square foot.
Thank you.
Yep.
Director Elwood, we had this building appraised a few years ago, a couple of years ago, was it? And you don't need to give me a date. I'm just trying to confirm that we did have that happen. I'm sorry, my mind is in a lot of places tonight. My son was in a car accident, and so I'm working through this meeting. Can you send Tom and the rest of the board members that information when tomorrow or whenever you think about it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, I can do that.
And Board President, on the foothills of that is how much we owe on this building. And last time I looked, Mr. Chady and I and Mrs. Elwood, we looked, you know, there's a long-term debt. It was like at $4.5 million that we still owe on this building, which, yeah, that's just what it is. And we're paying that off. And if I remember right, our payments are accelerated. I don't know if we just paid interest-only payments, but we haven't paid off much on that debt.
I will get that for you as well.
Thank you.
So since it takes a while for us to potentially sell property, one of the things I'd like the board to consider is to take a look at the various pieces of property we have and to try to make some decision. Should we try to sell some of these pieces of property? We may not get it during the next budget year. It may take 2 years, but eventually you're going to need the revenue in one way or the other. So the question is, which is going to be of more value, holding on to pieces of property or selling them to offset some future expenditure? And I have thought about, should we move Colac? If we sell Colac, the issue is if we owe more than it's worth, it doesn't solve our at least our near-term budget issue. It may help down the road, but doesn't solve the near-term budget issue. All right. The second one, what I'll call, is open positions. In other words, we have some positions that we have had for the last couple of years that we haven't filled. We have positions that we're looking at that we may not need to fill. We believe that we can probably come up with $1 million in savings. So if I was taking a look at what's one of the easier cuts, I think we can save $1 million by taking a look at positions that have not been filled for the last year or two, positions we may no longer need because of enrollment or other issues. But we believe we can generate $1 million towards next year's budget to help decrease that 4.5 by, in this case, $1 million less. So.
Quick question. When we're looking at potentially eliminating positions that have not been filled, can we also include any increases that we're paying out to staff members that are taking on additional responsibilities? So we have a clear picture of what our actual savings are.
Yes, we actually have addendums and that coming up on the next slides.
Perfect, thank you.
So as I mentioned, we tried to look at every feasible area that we could take a look at to determine where could we come up with the money to balance the budget. These are not recommendations. These are all areas that I think we could look at. One is if we decided not to give a raise to anybody and we froze everybody's salary, we believe that would be a savings of $1.2 million. Now, I'm also going to play the devil's advocate. One of the things that you asked me to do when I came was figure out some way to attract and retain staff. If I don't give raises, that's going to make that pretty difficult. But it is an option. And what we need to do is consider all of the options and then try to put together which of the options we think are the most amenable. We have elementary guidance counselors in our buildings, 4 of them for 6 elementaries. This doesn't touch the guidance counselors at the middle school or high school, but if we were to eliminate elementary guidance counselors, we'd save about $450,000. Now, I want to make it clear, there is nothing that I'm going to tell you from this page on that is not going to have a negative impact on staff and kids. They all are. So people used to tell me when I started budgeting, Wayne, don't you know that that will be bad for kids? And my answer is, if we have anything on this list that isn't beneficial for kids, it should have been cut a long time ago. All of these will cause pain. Nursing. Right now, we spend not quite $1.2 million in nursing services. We have a director of nursing, we have 5 nurses, we have 8 health room assistants for this size district. We might want to take a look. Can this number be less? I was talking, is that when I was in Mount Horeb, we had about 2,800 kids, which is less than this, but we had 2 nurses in our district for 2,800 kids, and the secretaries dispense meds. Is that the ideal solution? Maybe not. But what I'm trying to do, and this is what I want to keep getting ahead, is that options. Because if we do not look at them this year, you are going to have to look at them a year from now. So I want people to start thinking about what are the possible changes that we are going to have to make in our district in order to balance our budgets, not only for next year, 26, 27, but also for 27, 28. When this year we're cutting about 4.5, we're cutting just less than 15 million in 27, 28. Instructional coaches. We have a lot of our coaches that are paid through with grant funds. However, what we're looking at is there a way that we can take some of our instructional coaches, move them into a different position that we currently have? We may use them differently. This year we've used some in the classroom because we didn't have enough staff. That was because we didn't have a choice. What I'm looking at is, should we take a look at how we use these staff so that maybe some of our grant staff can take the place of some of our Fund 10 staff. Every time we make a change, we still keep that classroom connection, teacher in front of students. However, I can reduce Fund 10. Now, remember, every time I do that, whatever their initial role was, they are no longer playing their initial role. So if I take an instructional coach and I move them into a teaching position, following the rules of the grant, because we have certain rules, that is a classroom teacher I may not have to hire, so I can reduce my Fund 10 budget. But it means that whatever that person was originally doing, they will no longer be doing. So it's just taking the existing staff and looking at how we can use them differently. And we have just shy of $3 million worth of this type of staff. So you couldn't move them all, so you can't save like $3 million by just doing it. But we may be able to have some savings, and it's just, as I said, I'm trying to start the discussions for this year and next year, because if that's it, a direction can be, Wayne, take a look at all these and bring back a plan how we could maybe use these differently that would help save Fund $10. Okay. Go ahead, you can.
Dr. Anderson, that slide says 4 guidance counselors at the elementary school, but we have 6 elementary schools. Are 2 of the positions not filled, or?
I think we only have 4.
Okay. And the elementaries, they have a guidance counselor, a psychologist, and a social worker? Do we have 4 of each of those categories?
I think most of the buildings, and I will look for Dee Dee, I think most of them have a social worker, most of them have a psychologist, if they were fully staffed. So I think we would have at the elementary school 6 social workers and 6 psychologists if they're fully staffed. All right, next slide. Oh, not next slide.
Quick question. So I haven't heard them called guidance counselors lately. Is that a new term for these counselors?
That's just my old school.
Okay, all right. Because I think the guidance counselors used to be more like career focused, right? And these people are doing more like small group instruction and things of that nature to like help students that are dysregulated or need some social emotional learning.
Right, they do different types of works, they hold groups, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm used to using the term guidance counselor because that's what I'm used to using.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. All right, addendums. So we have addendums that we put on contracts. These are for pay for extra duties. Last year, we had about $217,000 worth of additional payments for additional duties. So far this year, we have $102,000. Now, we haven't paid all the addendums out, so that number is going to increase. But what we can look at in the future is, do we want to cut back on some of these? And these are the academic addendums. Now, what does that mean? That means National Honor Society, French Club, different organizations that we pay club advisors. If we decided we were not going to pay those, which means literally you're not going to have it, there's a savings we could have. My guess is going to be at the end of this year about $200,000. Now I keep repeating, there is nothing I'm going to tell you that's going to be good for kids. They're all going to have an impact. What we're going to have to decide is which of the impacts are going to have the least impact on our kids. But that's academic addendums, all right? If we're paying people, right now we pay people to do extra duties. These are like the clubs, academic clubs. This is not athletics. If we start taking a look at all those and determining, it's not that, it's never that you have to cut out all of them, but what it is do you want to take a look in, are there some we can reduce, because a dollar is a dollar. At the end of the day, every dollar that we save, that's a dollar that we've saved that we can put towards balancing the budget. We have add-on licensures, and if we could freeze the column. So again, this is salary for our staff. If we were to look at doing that, we estimated we'd save about $150,000 a year. Again, this is money that staff is earning. We've asked them to get various addendums, which means they can pick up some additional work in the school, but we pay for that. There's nothing to say that you can't, but remember that, of course, if I've been the teacher and I went back to get some additional certification because I wanted to earn additional dollars, and I've done that, and now you're saying, well, no more. Again, it has a negative impact, but these are dollars we can take a look at. We have 3 gifted and talented teachers. One is retiring at the end of the year. We don't need to replace it. Now, it means there's going to be less services, but it means we're doing it by attrition. We're starting to look at when people leave our district, do we need to rehire all of them? Or knowing that we're going to have less students in the future, can we start taking a look? Because if you don't fill a position because of attrition, that means you didn't take a job away from anybody because they left voluntarily on their own, in this case, the retirement. So I'm taking a look. We have 3. We know one's retiring. Do we want to fill that position? If we don't, we save $118,000. Athletics. All right. We talked about middle school athletics. If you wiped it out, you said we're no longer going to offer athletics at the middle school, what are you going to save? Probably about not quite $80,000. All right? So you've taken it away, $80,000. But now you have no feeder programs in any of your, because obviously middle school helps feed in the high school. You basically eliminate your feeder programs unless we were to find other types of activities. Like I know that Dan had talked about, if we looked at middle school football, there may be a way for a club activity to take that over, which would eliminate our expense, but wouldn't eliminate the activity. But we have to take a look. If we did that, that's what it would save, but then you have no feeder programs. Want to put high school on? High school is trickier, all right? If we want to keep all of the high school sports that we currently have, you have to increase the budget by $100,000. Because the budget that was built in the last 2 years, as you already know, wasn't sufficient. We're already in the hole in the red. So if we want to keep the athletics at the high school that we currently have, we have to raise that by $100,000, which means now the 4.5 went to 4.6. If you want me to keep that amount the same that we had budgeted, that means some of these have to be cut. Now, it doesn't mean you have to cut the whole sport. It means you can cut a JV program. It means that you can tell coaches you can no longer have a full schedule. I'm making up, I don't know how many basketball, but we just had a successful basketball season. Let's say they can play 24 games during their season. You might say you can play, but you can only play 20 games. You can't have a full schedule, so we can save the transportation costs, because that's one of our major costs. Or you can't have, the hiring of officials. But if we want to keep the current slate of athletics at the high school, I have to increase that budget by $100,000 just to keep us where we're at. If we don't, I have to cut activities in here to bring us down to $100,000. Remember, I'm doing all my discussions so you can think of not only this year, but a year from now, because these are all going to come up. I have a solution for you this year to make your cuts minimal, but it makes it much drastic a year from now. So athletics, we can take a look at what we do, but remember, if we want to keep the same programs for kids, then we need to add to the budget. If we don't, I need to cut activities. Now, we already lose students, so let's be honest. If I cut high school athletics, the number of students that leave your district is going to increase. Because one of the reasons that some kids stay and perform, at least at the high school level, is because of athletics. Athletics keeps them in. If you don't offer it, They're gonna go somewhere that does. Okay.
Are there any board questions? Okay, for the athletics, Dr. Anderson, did you look into, or was a consideration of, I think some sports have a coach and an assistant coach. Can we look at perhaps
we can take a
eliminating
look
an
at
assistant
trimming.
coach or something?
We can take a look at having less coaches, which is coaching addendums, which are in those numbers. We can take a look at cutting, you might have a varsity program and cut the JV program. There are cuts we can make without eliminating the entire sport. But they are gonna eliminate the opportunities for some kids, because if I eliminate JV, there's a group of kids in JV that don't have a team. But, yes, we can take a look, like I said, we could tell coaches they can't have a full slate of games, which saves us, especially transportation for away games and costs. But then, again, it puts us at a disadvantage from others.
I know this is not ideal. This is not ideal. None of the things that we are discussing at this point are. But if we did get to a point where we needed to eliminate JV, are there any rules, and Mr. Gratz, maybe you can help with this, that for students that didn't make the varsity team, they could still practice, they just wouldn't have a competition schedule? Are there any rules that would prevent us from doing that, so we have students that are engaged, and then the next season could again try out for varsity?
I'm going to speak and then I'll let Dan speak. I'm not aware of any rules that would prohibit us. What I think I think we'd hear from coaches is that, since I use basketball, I'll use it again. If the varsity coach and the assistant are used to working with 15 kids, and we cut the JV program, now they're working with 30 kids, and they're going to basically say is, how are we going to keep 30 kids active and involved, especially if half of them are not going to be in a game this year just because of our numbers. So is there anything from like WI that would prohibit it? I'm not aware of anything prohibited. There are just some things on the other side that if we wanted to have that opportunity, we could do maybe intramurals, and have them in-house playing each other. You still have some costs, but you at least eliminate your transportation. Dan, did I miss something? All right, let the bad news continue. Legal costs. You average not quite $500,000 a year in legal costs. One of the things that I would say maybe we want to consider is hire your own in-house lawyer, one that works here, full-time. I've contacted one of my friends, I'm waiting to hear back from them, who used to be the head of all of the school attorneys in the state of Wisconsin, to find out what would a fair wage and compensation be for someone full-time. My guess, and please, I make it high on the guess portion, would be $250,000 would probably be a fair amount of money for an in-house person. I think Tom thinks that's a little high. But anyway, if you look at, even if that was the right number, you could at least cut some of this cost down, and you would have someone here every day to address some of our issues. And we do have lots of, when I look at my secretary, Ms. Dooley, her day is consumed by open records requests. Her day for the vast hours are just open records requests. A lot of times we have to contact legal, which then adds additional costs. It's just something to consider. I will try to get a better cost, but it may be where we can provide the same types of services and save some dollars.
Isn't it just logical to get somebody?
We're bringing it up so that all sorts of ideas.
I understand, but
So,
Megan Miller?
Hey, it's been brought up in the past about charging a modest fee for open records requests. Did we ever figure out if that was legal?
yes, it is, and we do already. So we look at, if it's going to be something that we believe is under $50, then we don't charge. If we believe our time and that is going to be exceed that, we tell the people right off the bat that their cost is going to probably go in where we're going to have to charge them, and we let them know that before we start doing the construction. So we already charge some individuals for open records requests if we believe that the time and energy to solve that is going to be over $50. Next. Security.
Thank you. I just I applaud this effort to go into legal because I've learned over my 2 years on the board on how much we have spent in legal. And I understand it ebbs and flows. We had a lot of investigations since I've been on board, and I know that. But I also know, Mrs. Johnson, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we did hire an in-house attorney, how many firms do we have on retainer? I know Boardman Clark is one of them we have currently, right? I mean, I think it's an excellent idea, and then to bring in another firm who backs up that one.
Oh, yes.
If you could just address that, please. Thank you.
Yes. I believe there are 3 legal firms that the board can reach out to if we need to. And the board would always need to have an attorney or a legal firm external of the school district of Beloit because of the situation where if we were to hire an attorney, that attorney would then become the superintendent's employee. And so we would need a reserve for if there were ever any issues with situations concerning the superintendent, which hopefully if we do a really good job hiring, there won't be.
Thank you for shedding that light.
And the bottom line is you do use different firms, and you're not going to eliminate your costs entirely. But if we can reduce them, I mean, let's say that we could say $100,000. $100,000 is a staff member they can keep. And that's what I always keep in my mind is how many staff members does this equate to? Okay, next. We have security. So like at the high school and middle schools, we have 6 security officers at the high school, 3, one at BLA, one at Ulrich, and one at Frozen. Plus we have 3 SROs. So if you take a look at what we pay for basically outside security, we're looking at $750,000. All right? Can we reduce that? Do we need that many security officers? We have assistant principals at the high school. I know that Emily would like if we took 3.5 and made it 4. If we gave her the 4th principal, assistant principal, and we could eliminate 2 guards, that would be something. I'm going to be a broken record. All of these things we currently do are useful and necessary. But we need to take a look at where can we make either cuts for the present year or for the 27-28 year that are staying as far away from the classroom as possible. I think SROs are a great thing. They start having that establishment in the community. We have had some issues with SROs this year, not with the behavior, but because of shortage of officers. Or sometimes we don't have an SRO because there's just not one available. They're for other, they've been taken out for other police duties. So we want to take a look because, like I said, this is $750,000 that's not in our classroom. Professional development. First, when I talk to teachers, I've already promised them, I'm not going to do the flavor of the day. For those who may not know what flavor of the day means, it's that when a new person comes in, they have brand new ideas and they say, what we're going to do this year, folks, is program A, B, or C. And they have to learn A, B, or C, and since I've been doing this a while, I can already tell you what happens in the rows as I'm sitting up there talking. Teacher A whispers to teacher B, who's younger. Don't sweat it. The guy's going to be gone pretty soon. Smile, keep your head down, because in another year or two, it'll be a different flavor. So you invest money, but it doesn't produce anything, or it doesn't produce as much as it can. So what I've been telling you is we're going to, professional development that we've started, we're going to keep with that until we get it actually as part of our culture. But if we take a look, we can take a look at what are we spending on professional development, not only to send people out, but also to bring people in. Are there things that we could, and I know the teachers are going to love me for this, for 30 seconds, is that what if we reduced our PD and on those days gave them time to just work in their classrooms? All right, so they would, for 30 seconds. I'm simply taking a look at where do we currently spend our money? How can we look at spending it differently so that we can save some money? If we could cut 70 in half to save 35, that's 35,000. There's paraprofessionals. So it's taking a look at what do we spend our current money on? Can we spend it differently? Do we need to spend it at all? Delayed maintenance. This is in every district, unfortunately. There might be a district out there that's not, so I shouldn't say every district. That's generalization. Many districts. We have 2 projects we have slated for this upcoming summer. One is parking lot maintenance in Aldrich. We're looking at that. It's just shy of $400,000. Roof maintenance at Cunningham and Beloit Memorial, about $1 million. If you postpone that, you can save $1.8 million. But you're going to have to do it sometime. Now, the benefit that you have is that if we go to referendum in November, things that we have to either cut, reduce, eliminate, or postpone, we can tell the people, this is what we had to delay this project, these projects. It cost us $1.8 million. We think they need to be done. We're going to put that in the referendum because they need to be done, but we're trying to balance this year's budget. But eventually, this is money. In fact, you're going to end up paying more than this because the costs are always going to go up. But at least we have a referendum that we can designate items to the public to say, this is what we need to spend our money on, and we can list it. We can say, the roof maintenance of these 2 buildings, $1 million. The parking lot in Aldrich, not quite $400,000. But we can tell the people what it's going to be. So if we do need to make some adjustments, let's say we start reducing sports programs, we can tell the public, if you want them back, we can put them back, here's what they are and here's what they cost. So at least in a referendum, if we do have to make hard decisions, we can put those back into a referendum question to tell people, if you value this and you like us to do this, you have the opportunity because it'll be in a referendum vote. This is a thought question, all right? Thought question. By 2029, you might get the idea I'm trying to be a forward thinker, all right? Instead of just dealing with only what's at hand, what's coming into forward to think about it. By 2029, we're going to need 5,000 devices. Only a little over 1,000 will have Google support, which means you need to find 4,000 devices. What does that really mean? That means if we're going to continue to use devices in the way that we're currently using them, we are going to have to find some way to put in our budget over the next couple of years how we're going to replace and add these together. This isn't going to save you any money now. This is simply saying this is a big cost in the future that we need to start planning for, because the worst thing that whoever that superintendent is, because it won't be me, comes that year and says, here's the bill for 4,000 technology devices. And you go, whoo! Why didn't somebody plan for this in advance? Well, that's what we're doing now. We are looking, how can we build some in so that it's not one time? This is no cost savings to you now. This is an idea that you need to start thinking about to plan for the future so it doesn't become a massive heartache and headache 2029 is not that far away. We're in 26, in 3 years. Okay? Yep.
I have a question. So if we don't know how many students we're going to lose, how did we come up with that number by 2029, if I may ask?
Nope.
That is student and teacher devices, and it's just an estimate. You're
Okay.
right, it is an
Okay.
estimate, but.
Was it a dartboard?
No, it's
Just kidding.
it's an educated estimate.
Okay,
because-
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Now we can,
Can I just piggyback on that?
Yeah.
So if we would have gone back to our last meeting and approved buying these so-called devices, we would have, correct me if I'm wrong, we would have been buying antiquated ones that we would have to replace in 2029?
no, because they would have, the new devices that we would have purchased would have at least a 5-year license, so you'd have 5 years from the date that we received them, they'd be covered. So 26, it would be 2011.
Okay, so you're talking about replacing the ones that will be out of
31.
date?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now, OPEB. OPEB, for those that aren't familiar with it, maybe in the audience watching, was money that districts had to set aside to pay for retirement benefits. You have, for all practical purposes, paid that out, all right? The last person that was eligible in your district retired in '24. You already put in $2 million as a, just in case we needed to balance the budget we're in, all right? 25, 26. We'll determine at the end of the year how much of that we need to use. Right now, we have 4.6 million. Now, if we have to use all of that, that takes us down to 2.6 million. But you can use that to help offset your budget, but once it's gone, it's gone. It doesn't impact your taxes, so if you use it all, it's not going to raise or lower your taxes. So if you wanted a fallback, it's also not your fund equity. You do have some money that you can use to buy down the debt, but once you use it, it's gone. That's why I keep reminding you. This year we're looking at an estimated 4.5. 27, 28, we're looking at a little less than 15 million based on our assumptions. But you do have some. Carol?
We were told that using OPEB money would affect the taxes because it comes into the amount that we're spending out, and then it changes how the state looks at our expenditures and our other things.
So if we brought the OPEB in without having corresponding expenditures in that year, then yes, it would affect the mill rate in the next year because it would affect shared costs. So that if you used it to increase your fund balance, yes, it will have an effect on shared costs. But if you bring it in and you have expenses for that matching for that same year, then it will have little effect.
All right, so we go. One more. We've been talking about some of the things, how we need to make cuts. There are other things, and what if you add to your budget also? So one of the things, and I've asked Jeff Stenerus, who's patiently waiting, to come up and explain, is that when I got here, and I wasn't here too long, Jeff walked into my office and said, you know, Wayne, glad you're back. Just thought we should go through a little bit of explanation. And part of that is, you need to put $500,000 in the budget for the audit. So then, thank you, Jeff. So I told Jeff, since we're talking about the budget for 26, 27, 28, that he could do a much better job of explaining why we need this.
Why we need this is to maintain our auto program. So when we were given the notice that we were going to be, our lease is going to be terminated by the Hendricks properties, that meant we need to find another spot. We moved into this spot here, which is a much smaller location. And so in order to get us back to where we were before, there was an expansion that was a part of it. So when Dr. Garrison was here and we looked at proposals, we had another off-site one that we could have looked at that was a large enough facility, but it required a considerable amount of our money to invest in it for some changes to make it up to grade. And so I said we could do that, but we were still off-site. We pay approximately $6,000 a month in transportation to go from there to there, and we had a lease cost. So in essence, our autos program costs us about $100,000 a year, with lease costs going up, transportation costs going up every year. So in addition, I mean, realistically, we are saving now approximately $110,000 a year by having it on-site, not having a lease cost and transportation, with nothing else. But our site is we have about 40% of our equipment in that. We have the rest of the equipment in storage that we are paying for right now. So part of it was, we need to build this addition onto it to bring our program back to what it was, take our equipment currently in there. And so the $500,000, yeah, I did a couple of rough estimates. Cleary Building, we had an architect come and take a look at this. They're giving us roughly about a $375,000 price for an addition, plus any other inside extra work if we have to expand some electrical and some HVAC. But when we moved into this building, we did some of that work preliminarily. We put some electrical and putting in there saying we are going to add extra bays to this. We're going to add some extra pieces. And so they prepped some of that ahead of time, thinking that that was a direction we're going to go. So again, it was like $375,000 was the rough cost with this. And then they were allowing some extras for a parking lot because we'd have to expand outward, doing some additional grading. It's a fairly level site, but that's where we kind of come up with that $500,000 to add it's basically a 40-foot extension to the west of that building and along the entire length of that building. So that's, again, to bring our autos program back to what it was before. If we don't, we have about 40% of what we have, and we have a lot of excess pieces, and we have very high numbers asking for this program and where we are in elevation of the state. And if we don't, like I said, as Dr. Anderson said, we're going to be hurting a program, and that's really where we're at.
Thank you, Jeff. Stay right there, if you would.
I'm here.
As going into my second year on the board, and I've learned that our high school has become, the model for the trades group and people being prepared for the future in the trades. We should be accentuating that and helping the trades group grow, because as I've learned, and you have educated me, how stellar we are in what we do in the basement of the high school and what you're doing, and Guy, with the auto trades. We need to invest in that, and we have to accentuate that this is our model. This is what we're good at. That just makes Beloit Memorial High School come here for that. These people are earning just as much or probably more than a 4-year degree coming out of high school. So I think it's a very worthwhile investment for this, and we need to think it through. And I know we're talking about property, and selling property probably encroaches on what you're talking about. And I just think there's a good way, efficient way to look at that. And my conversations with Mr. Gratz, about helping the CTE also with where the south side of the campus sits. If we own that property, why sell it? If we're going to invest in that future of that building. And I know it costs money, Dr. Hennis, I really do. But this is a place we need to invest at, because the marketplace has told us we are very good at what we do. And we have to keep investing in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Now, I will remind you is that we have talked off and on about a referendum in November. This is something that you can put in a referendum in November that says, in order to bring our auto program back to what it was, we need X amount of dollars spent on these things to keep our program where it was. So at least a referendum in November does give us the option to tell people, if you believe in this and believe that this is something that you would like our district to have, we can do that. It just means that this is the cost. You'd have to vote yes, and this is what the impact would be on your taxes. Fund 80. I've asked Mark, because one of the things is that Mark and I talked about early on is I believe in partnerships. I believe what can we do to work with outside groups that can enhance the program for our students and our staff. One of the things that Mark and I talked about, and I'm going to turn it over to him, is what if the Boys and Girls Club served like an after-school program for more of our kids? What would that take? Now, Fund 80 is not a referendum. Fund 80 is not Fund 10. Fund 80 is a community project that you can put on the taxes without going to referendum, as long as it serves the entire community. So I asked Mark if he could come and a little bit explain about how this might work and what he would need from the district in order to make it work.
I have a question, actually, in the spirit of full transparency. My mic, thank you. In the spirit of full transparency, Megan sent me a text because talking's kind of difficult. She's asking if we'll have the opportunity to discuss what to prioritize. Just like you're looking ahead at cuts, will the board have the opportunity to craft a vision for what to invest in based on its value for our kids and the return on investment for enrollment?
Yes, and what I would say for that is, when people ask about vision statements, I said if you really want to see the vision statement for any district, look at its budget. Because where people put their money is where they're putting their priorities. So in a way, that's what we're starting the discussion. But as we go on, that's exactly what we have to do is, what is it that we put the most value on that we want to make sure we're putting the dollars to? Because you can't put the dollars everywhere. All right. Give my voice a 30-second break.
Great. Thank you. I'm Mark Rand. I'm the CEO, proud CEO of the State Line Boys and Girls Club, an alumnus of Beloit Schools, father of 3 kids that are alumnus of Beloit Schools, and a proud alum of the Boys and Girls Club. So when we first started talking about Fund 80 to fund our after-school program, this isn't a new idea. There are several clubs across the state that work in partnership with their school districts to receive Fund 80 dollars to supplement their funding for their after-school program. What do we provide in our after-school program? If you've never been inside a Boys and Girls Club, if you've never taken part in the programs before, yes, there's an academic piece. So we have academic support, we have homework help, we have targeted tutoring, mentorship. We have obviously recreational activities for kids. But more importantly now what we have is lifestyle and career readiness programs for kids. I was here last year talking about our Be Great Graduate program that is state grant funded. That we're proud to say we had our first 3 graduates this last graduation class. So what the biggest issue for us is, what Fund 80 would help us with, is for us to serve more kids, we need more resources, right? Because we have to hire more staff or bring in more volunteers. And the 2 biggest deterrents for any youth program is cost and transportation. Our membership cost to the Boys and Girls Club is $25 a school year. And we even have financial assistance available for those, that $25. We don't create barriers. I've been in this job 10 years. We have never turned a kid away from the Boys and Girls Club because they couldn't pay the $25. What this would help us with also is transportation. That's one of the things that we've talked about, is transportation. We have rough estimates from Durham on what it would cost to create a route from each school. Currently, we serve, in 25-26 school year, we serve just over 1,000 kids. 700 of those were from the school district of Beloit. The rest come from the other school districts in the area. I will add as well that in the state line area, there are over 6,000 school-age youth. So between the ages of 6 and 18, which is the ages that we serve, there are over 6,000. Now granted, us, the programs at the YMCA, programs at Community Action, now programs at the Rising Tide, it's very difficult for even those 4 entities to serve all 6,000 youth. I could inundate you with data on what happens from the hours of 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Most of you who have been involved in education or been involved with the board, you already know that data. You already know the statistics. That's where we come in. I always say, those that are the educators, you've got the 7 to 3 locked down. That's where you guys are the experts. From 3 to 7, that's where we feel like we're the experts, along with some other organizations in the community. So what Fund 80 would allow us to do, it would allow us to obviously provide more transportation and provide more staffing to serve more kids. Like I said, 700 kids. Our average daily attendance just at this club right across the parking lot is just over 100 kids. It's about 102, 104, depends on the month. And the studies are out there. There's many kids that if a program was available to them, that they would take part in it. Now we do compete nowadays since COVID. We compete with kids staying home by themselves at a much earlier age. But we feel like we're providing safe environment, positive adult mentorship. We feed them. That's no easy task sometimes. But, and the programs that we provide, they're evidence-based. The data is all there. I'm happy to provide any data points that you would require from us. I've given Dr. Anderson a proposal from ours. We're asking for approximately $250,000 a school year. Now that works out to be about $27,000 a month. Our monthly expenses are 3 times that. So we're not asking for this to fund our entire operation. In comparison, city similar demographics, similar size, with an arrangement like this, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. They've been getting Fund $80 for over 20 years. They get north of $500,000 every year. And the reason for that is, obviously, 20 years of history, 20 years of trust between the school district and the Boys and Girls Club organization, that each entity is going to do what they say that they're going to do. And we feel like we have a good relationship with the school district. And as long as I sit in that chair, as long as the board lets me sit in that chair, we're going to do what we tell you we're going to do. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I
You
can.
bus kids in at home today?
We do. We
Are
do
there any-
bus a small amount of kids now. We do have shuttle vans that we go and pick up. We pick up probably, the last number I looked at, it was just south of 250 kids a week in our shuttle vans. I mean, the club's full right now because the schools are on spring break. So, club motto across the country is when schools are out, clubs are in. So that's what we're here for.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Rand. In our conversations over the last year or two, whatever, we talked about wraparound, and you're talking about after school.
Yep.
And I don't want to get into something that, might be coming down the line, but we also talked about preschool, before school starts. Is that still in the works somewhere down the line? And then after that, I want to get with Mrs. Elwood. We have been carrying a balance in our Fund 80 for a couple of years since I've been on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere like $350,000. And how that works, and why it isn't a tax levy, but it'll show up on your. But my first question is to you, Mark, about, I guess it would be more about the preschool. Thank you. In the morning.
We've had those conversations, and actually we used to, when I first came 10 years ago, we used to do a couple of different schools before school sites. The issues that you run into with before school is it's glorified babysitting because you're operating from 7 to 7:50. And if every kid got there right at 7 o'clock, fantastic. You could probably, because you're getting them in and you're feeding them right away, and then maybe for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you can help a handful of them with their homework that they didn't do the night before, or half of them you're trying to keep awake until they line them up when the school bell rings. And the other issue for us and any before school program is staffing. I mean, if you've got one staff there and they call off, then what happens?
So Stephanie, if you could address the Fund 80 balance, and I may have been wrong in the balance that we carry in our Fund 80 right now.
Yep, so for our Fund 80, we currently are spending some of those dollars down with the Even Start program and some of our extracurricular securities in Fund 80. So as those are spent, that brings that fund balance down in Fund 80. When those are completely exhausted, then we would need to levy again the fund that next year for whatever expenditures we're planning on for that next year.
Well, Mark brought up a point, you know, and I don't want to get into a long discussion on the budgetary part of Fund 80, but do you know what our balance is in Fund 80? And if Mark's asking for, or the Boys Club's asking for $250, would that then lock, and I've heard this talk before, that would lock us into a certain amount and that would just carry on year after year after year? And Mark, you kind of said something about that. And I've heard that said before about Fund 80, once it's approved, then it can go on for a while.
Well, it can, but the board always has the option. You can put something in Fund 80 and you can keep that up. But if for any reason you wanted to stop funding it, the board has the right to do that. If you decide to commit to something, it's not that you have to stay with it in perpetuity. You could, at some time in the future, if you no longer thought, Mark wasn't there, the next person in there isn't doing the job Mark's doing, you can stop it.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I'm going to retire someday. My wife doesn't know that yet, so let's keep that here.
I was wondering where we were on the CLC grants. Do we still have some? Are they still running? Do we work with the Boys and Girls Club on the CLC grant? And if we still have the CLC grant and we're not working with Boys and Girls Club, can we do that?
So the CLC grants that we have are a federally funded grant programs that we have inside of our school district. They are not part of the Boys and Girls program. They're separate.
I mean, I know they're on site, but Boys and Girls Club will come sometimes to the sites and do services at the sites. Can we be using some of our CLC money for that? And how many CLC programs do we have now? We used to have a lot, but.
3? Yep, we have 3 sites. And as far as changing the way the program is run, that would have to be a further discussion.
And what are the sites?
Aldridge, Cruzen, and Todd.
And how much longer will they be funded? Do we know? Where are they in their cycles? Because it's a 3-year grant, I think.
Actually, isn't it 5 years? I think I believe it's a 5-year grant cycle,
Okay.
but then they reapply for them after those 5 years. So it's dependent upon federal funding.
Yeah, well, and some of them have lost them over the years, so, okay.
We had a CLC grant in Illinois at our Illinois club in South Beloit, and we were one of 3 club organizations that lost it this past year. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Rand.
All right, so that concludes for all the good news I had to give everyone tonight. But the important parts is we are looking at this for 2 years. We're looking at this for next year, 26, 27, 4.5. Then we're looking at a larger fiscal cliff, if our assumptions are correct, for 27, 28. There are ways that we can get through the 26, 27 budget with the least amount of pain. You can postpone your projects, which is about 1.8 million. We can find $1 million worth of staffing, we're pretty confident. So you got 2.8 million. If you look at legal, you might be able to save 100, 200,000. Takes you to 3 million. I wrote down the rest, but my memory's not as good at my age as it used to be. You could look at properties. We already know that's a long effort, but eventually you'll get some. That could bring us, depending on what properties sell, what we use them for, but it could bring at least some revenue. And like I said, you're going to need it sometime, so my thought would be if we start looking at possibilities now, it will help you eventually down the future. We cannot hire the gifted and talented teacher that retired. That saves you another $118,000. If I'm not recommending this, I don't know that how many things I am recommending, to be real honest. We're putting out an RFP for technology. If we say we're not going to do technology for a year, we're going to go by on what we're going to have, it's going to save you several $100,000. Then you have some OPEB funds you can use. There are ways that you can balance your near-term budget without impacting the classroom very much. What you'll have to do, is take a look at, we've already thought about the referendum in November, is making sure we can tell people what do we want our district to look like, especially in the 27, 28 school year when we have less students. What is it that we want to make sure that we offer students and staff? What is it that we need to take a look at? What will we probably look like? And as Megan mentioned, what's the vision for what we want to offer so we can say, here are the things that we probably are going to have to divest ourselves of because we won't have as many students. But here's the things we want to offer that we can put in a budget and then make a case to the public that if they would like X, Y, or Z, they have the ability to do that, but we're going to have to increase taxes. And remember to go back to one of the slides. Right now, for every $1 million that we would ask in a referendum, it basically would take a $100,000 house, $30. So we have for 10 million, that means a $100,000 house, their property taxes would increase by $300. We need to explain to people and determine what is it that you want the district to look like, what are the offerings that you would like us to make sure that are available for your kids and your grandkids or the friends of your kids. List that out and then ask the public to make the case. Because, as I said, this is a tale of two budgets. The one for next year, 26, 27, which I think you can get to without a great deal of pain. But the 27, 28, because once you've spent the easy dollars and they're not there anymore, which is going to create more pain. So we have to start our next budget now. So you are no sooner going to pass a 26, 27 than I'm going to recommend that you start your 27, 28 budget right then, so we can have those discussions with people about referendum, about what it's going to look like, and what it's going to take to offer them the opportunities that they'd like to see in the future. So I know that I was the bearer of bad news, but you know, like I've told people in the past, the advantage of being me is I can be blunt. I can tell you the things I think you need to hear, not always the things you want to hear, though I would every once in a while like to tell you things you want to hear. Take us where we're at. These are some discussions that I think we need to hold over the next couple months, is so that if there are areas you say, Wayne, we'd look at area X, then we can get you all the specifics and say, here's what the impact if we did, I'll take nursing. We have 1.1. If we had to cut this, here's what it would look like in the schools. Because remember, every dollar that you don't spend on that will help us balance the budget. Like I said, when I very started this presentation, my goal was to keep us as far away from the teacher in the classroom as possible. You can do that, I think, this year. We will see in the planning for the years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Carol Fox?
Well, I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of things to say. But
Should I sit down?
One of the things I'd like to see and maybe get us started right away is not an ad hoc committee, but a district level committee where people from the district, the different buildings get together and really start hashing out some of these things and what people really want to look at. We expand it out to parents, we expand it out to citizens, and start talking about some of those priorities for next year and for this year. I'm curious to see some of the staffing plans. I would assume there might be some more than one plan. You know, we've talked about, you know, we're going to lose 200 students. The question is, where are we predicting we're going to lose those 200 students? Right now, they're probably looking at doing high school courses and doing some of those kinds of things. We need to be looking at what we're going to be doing in terms of reducing at the high school and what can be reduced at the elementary schools. And part of the staffing plan, I'd like to see if we're going to not have counselors, how are we going to staff? So we're providing support services for the buildings. So, you know, in order to really look at what the priorities are, we need to see good staffing plans in order to know what that is. You know, you talked about reducing salaries. I don't know that that's a good option, but there's also an option to look at the calendar and maybe decrease some of the days that are worked as another alternative to reducing salaries. We don't reduce the salary, but we reduce the number of days worked. That's, you know, something that needs to be looked at. You're talking about addendums. I've never ever seen, we need to see a list of the addendums, and what I'd like to see both with the addendums and the sports is I'd like to see a list of what those clubs are, how many students are impacted by those clubs, you know, what is the data that goes along with some of those kinds of things. Like I said, both academic addendums and sports addendums. This would be maybe a whole different group of people, but I think we need to look at some sort of committee, some sort of group that's looking at technology and what we want to really do for the future of technology. There's a lot of issues about using technology for educating, especially for our young students. And, you know, now's the time to, if we're going to be looking at making some of those changes, to look at making some of those changes. Because we don't need to be buying a whole bunch of technology and then deciding we don't think we want to use that as a way to educate our students. So yes, we need a technology plan, but it needs to include what our choices are really for academics and how that works. I'd hate to, I don't know what to do about facilities. You know, it's like when we're doing roofs and things like that. It's like if we ignore the facilities, then we ruin our facilities, which costs us more money down the road. It would be possible to put it in the referendum, but then if the referendum fails, then we have a bad roof that we're not taking care of. So lots of different things to be focusing on. But I'd like to see staff have an opportunity to get a committee going where there's, you know, somebody, representatives from all the different buildings and administrators and social workers and counselors and all those folks to look at some of the ideas and some of the staffing plans and give input and give ideas and talk about what their vision is for the future and what kinds of ideas they can come up with.
Thank you, Carol. Brian?
I just wanted to ask, I'm assuming you're going to forward this presentation to the board?
It's been uploaded to Board Docs,
Oh, it is? Okay.
along with all the attachments.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, did that just happen this afternoon? Or?
Yes, it
Okay,
does.
thank you.
Mrs. Levy?
Thank you. Dr. Anderson, do you mind, this is so much great information for us to review and think about. Do you mind creating a list of the items that you kind of not recommended, you know, proposed as options throughout your presentation, so that we can begin to think about what Board Member Miller said, is looking at that list aligned with our priorities as a district and start to prioritize where would be the best place to implement some of these decisions. That would be really helpful.
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you so
I can work on
much.
that it'll be before I leave.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other board members? Tom, Joanne? Megan? Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Thank you, Stephanie. We really appreciate everything that you've done in this presentation, as difficult as it is. The next item on tonight is executive session. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, second by Carol Fox. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Schultz, can we get a roll call?
Yes. Joanne Rue,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Tom Hankins,
Aye.
Carol Fox,
Aye.
and Tia Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Board members, please remember to log out of your open session Google Meets.
Deedle, deedle.
Now that since you're on such good mood before.
I don't know, I didn't know your strategy
Hey,
is
the
there.
truth is always
Pretty
good.
wild. Amy, yes, I feel so bad. It's okay.